Hey, Kat here. I started The Deep at the beginning of July, and I had every intention of finishing it, but I just finished it just the other day because there were other things that I kept wanting to do, like the Booktubeathon, and there were other books that I wanted to read. This took a while because there were times when I lost interest in it. It was okay. There were some parts in it. Oh, and by the way, this is called The Deep by Nick Cutter, okay? And he received accolades for his book, The Troop. I haven't read that yet. But I thought, oh, hey, I'll try this. And it did sound kind of good. And I'm not saying that it was bad, but it just couldn't keep my interest. Like I kept looking at other books that I wanted to read. So that's why it took me such a long time, because I would stop reading it and then I'd just get into other books, or, focus my attention on the Booktubeathon. But this had been something I had wanted to finish early in July, but I just put it aside. Like I said, it was okay, but I found at the end, I kept reading this and I was thinking, it's leading up to something, it's leading up to something, and I kind of thought I knew what it was leading up to, and then the final scenes made no sense. It was like a separate story. It didn't even fit with what was going on in the book. I just felt like the author just tacked it on because he's like, I've got to end this, I want to do something different, so I'm going to do this. And it came across to me as rather silly. I kept expecting Graham Chapman to come in while I was reading it going, stop it, this is silly, it's just silly. I kept expecting that. And that was a Monty Python reference. Anyway, yes, the ending was rather silly. And I felt like I had been, pulled along for nothing. But I didn't hate it, because there were scenes in it that were really, really good. Like there's one particular scene where this one guy that's down in this station at the bottom of the ocean, he's going through this thing with these bees and this hole in the wall down there. It's really, really strange, but it's interesting. When the main character reads his journal, you get kind of creeped out and you're like, okay, I'm wondering what's through that hole, and how is there a hole and the ocean water isn't going through it. That was a good scene. And he kept talking about other things, the main character, not just that. And I was kind of thinking, get on with it. I mean, you want to get to know the character, but you're like, come on, just get on with the story. Why do we have to flash back to this? What does this have to do with anything? I mean, I don't mind flashbacks, but this one, it just seemed like it was going nowhere. It's like, get to the point. When are we going to get to some creepiness? When are we going to find out what's going on? And I was just disappointed. It's basically what it is these people, okay, there's this disease on the planet and people get the gets. That's what they're calling it, the gets. And basically they die. They get this weird rash on them, and then eventually everything shuts down and they just die. And his brother supposedly, the main character's name is Lucas, and his brother Clayton supposedly is down on the bottom of the ocean, and he's found something that might cure the gets. And it turns out that this thing is kind of sinister. But his brother thinks that it's going to cure the gets. And his brother isn't even likable. You wonder why this Lucas is putting himself through what he's putting himself through for the sake of his brother. It's just, I mean, he's a very unlikable person. He's not even worth the time that Lucas spends on him. And he keeps having flashbacks to mean things his brother's done, and he has flashbacks to his evil mother, and I feel like his mother is like a stereotype, just a major stereotype that's like used all the time. And it got rather boring in those parts. It really, really did. And then there were some scary parts where he was explaining as a kid, well, he was flashing back to when he was a kid, and you think that he was having these little hallucinations. You find out at the end why he was having those hallucinations. Some of them were creepy, okay, but it just wasn't enough. I was like, oh, let me get done with this book already. I committed to it. I committed to finishing it. And I debated. I didn't know whether I wanted to give it 2 stars or 3 stars, but I ended up giving it 3 stars because in the end I felt like I could say that I did like it because I didn't hate it. I just wish the ending wouldn't have been so darn silly. So, I mean, it basically takes place, it's very claustrophobic. It takes place in this station down at the bottom of the ocean, as I stated. And these things that are going on that are unexplainable and bizarre with they call it ambrosia. Ambrosia is like this sea creature that they think is going to cure the Gets. But you know from the get-go when he gets down there that it's just sinister and it's got other plans. And then they do a 100-degree turn at the end when you thought it was all about this ambrosia. It's about something else. And, I mean, I realize that I'm not making this sound like a very good book. But I do feel like it deserved at least 3 stars because, like I said, there were scenes in here that were very well done that kept my attention. But there were too many boring parts and too much silliness. So that's my review for The Deep. Thanks for stopping by.